What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bad Catholic Dads podcast, episode 22. I am one of your hosts, John Perez, alongside my partner in crime, the greatest co-host in the history of podcasting, Derek Rogers. How's it going?
Whoa, high praise. Man, why didn't I hear you sing the Taylor Swift song either?
I'm feeling
You teased me that earlier.
Everything's gonna be all right. All right, there you go. That's it. That's all you get. That's all you get.
I don't see. Now you just succeeded me as the best one ever. Now you just topped it with the Taylor Swift song.
Dude, how's it been, man? It's been a couple. When's the last time we talked? We talked on when we did the Dunkirk review. That's really the last time we talk.
I don't know. It was a little bit ago.
It was last week, right?
It's been too long.
Well, if you're new, ladies and gentlemen, this is
so.
the Bad Catholic Dads podcast. Podcast where we just talk about fatherhood and being Catholic and trying to raise our kids and how to be cool dads. If you're new, thank you for listening. Derek, how's your life been, man?
The life has been going well. The Assumption was just recently today.
Happy
Feast of Assumption.
Yeah, happy Feast of Assumption. Did you guys go to mass? I mean, obviously you went to mass, but do you guys go late or early?
Oh, did I? Are you assuming that I went to mass on the Assumption? How dare you make an assumption on the Assumption?
I saw. Did you see the knock not the knock joke, but the joke where Mary's doing dishes with her mother, Saint Anne? Did you see that one?
No, I didn't.
I'm probably gonna butcher, but it goes like something like so Mother Mary and Saint Anne, Mary's mother, were doing dishes. And Mary goes, "Mom, I can't wait to get to heaven." And then she goes, "Don't assume," or something like that. It was just really, or I think it was like something with sin or something. But yeah, it was something like that. I was just like,
I had an update for my the high schoolers, for the youth ministry stuff, and it was a pretty good meme where it's like, I assume you know what day it is, and this reminded them of the mass times for today, and it's a picture of Mary in the middle of it. But yeah, went to the Assumption. I went. That's the one beautiful thing about working at a Catholic church too, is that you have these opportunities there. Yep. So I went at a 12 p.m. Mass. And then when I came back home, I watched the kids in Bethany went over to Mass at
Tag team.
All Saints.
Tag team.
It was a good holy day of obligation.
What's going on here? We're jamming out. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, okay,
we were jamming out. My finger hit my phone on accident. Awesome, dude. That's cool how you guys do like the whole one gets home, one goes, the other one gets home, the other one goes.
Holy days. Once you get like a squad full of family members, it's like, how are we doing? Would be the best, most efficient way for us to do this right now.
Yeah.
Feeling the best lately too.
Oh, so. We're getting some interference here with the internet. I hope they can hear you well. Hello?
I can kind of hear you. So.
Uh-oh, guys. What's going on
22, man. We're not paying our bills or something.
22. Hey, dude, so this week I went back to work for the first time. How
was that?
We had orientation for the diocese, which is, I'm not going to lie, it's really nice to be back in the Arlington diocese. And it's not shots fired if you're thinking, but it's really nice to be home just because basically Arlington diocese has been so good to me. It was the first diocese I moved outside of my home diocese. Saw some familiar faces, which was really nice. Do you know Mary Sample? Do you know her?
Oh, offhand,
she used to be youth minister.
Where?
Oh, I don't remember, but in the diocese, and she knew my wife, and
I probably met her. I just can't place the name.
Sure, but yeah, I saw she's a religion teacher here in the diocese now, which is really cool. I saw some cool youth. It was really nice. But yeah, no, the thing I want to say is I'm exhausted because I wasn't used to working, or I wasn't used to doing things and getting my brain mashed into fried eggs. But man, I was when I got home from the orientation, I was beat, dude. I was wow, I couldn't believe it.
That tolerance level, right? Your tolerance level has dropped for that extended period of focus.
I think part of it is just being during the summer we're brain dead half the time, so it's
it's so nice being brain dead though.
It's really nice. It's really nice. But anyway, speaking of school, episode 22, we're gonna get right into it. Our episode it's my topic this week, and my topic is timely because teachers are getting back to work. Shout out to teachers, by the way. We're all getting back to work. You're getting back to work soon too, right, Derek? When do you guys start youth ministry up again?
Oh yeah, starting up in September here, so we got a little bit of time. We have some some conferences and some things to do first, and then it's right into it.
Yeah. So a little bit timely episode. This episode's called Public versus Home versus Catholic School Teaching. So the reason why I picked this topic is because, one, school's just around the corner, but also your host, Derek, and I have some pretty good experience, me being a product of public education, Derek mostly being a product of homeschooling, and then we both have a little bit of Catholic school in us. I've taught at a Catholic school. I have Catholic school teaching experience for the past, I don't know, five years now. And Derek not only has a little bit of Catholic school, being in Catholic school, I think you said 3rd and 4th grade, but also being on the ministry side, working at a Catholic parish. Does your parish, is that connected to a school or?
Yes.
Okay.
It has up until 8th grade.
Cool.
For Our Lady of Good Counsel.
Cool. So let's talk about our experiences, and just kind of a forewarning and asterisk here. We're not professionals. We're not like favoring one versus the other. We're just kind of giving our experiences and really what our opinions are on the 3 different kind of schooling. And there's obviously more schooling, but these are what we're experienced with. So Derek, tell me a little bit about your kind of experience with, I guess, homeschooling. When did it start? Did you like it? And kind of what have you, I guess, like, because it's been a while now, like looking back, what have you kind of, what's the key takeaways you've gotten from it?
Yeah, I was a Catholic at Catholic school up until 3rd grade, and then we were going to be moving, and like a transition kind of period. My mom was like, you know what, let's give homeschooling a shot. I was having trouble at school with a lot of bullyings, a lot of fights had happened. And my mom was like, let's give this a shot because we don't want to have you switch schools like during the year. So we're going to start, 4th grade, we're going to move, and then we're going to just see how that year goes. So I was on board with it because as soon as I hear that I don't have to ride a bus for an hour, a total of like maybe 2 hours a day, I was like, let's do it, man. I would get motion sickness trying to do my homework in the bus because I wanted to get home and play. I didn't want to do all my homework. So I'm like, I'm good with that. And I was really excited to just jump on board because I figured, I was like, oh, I'm not going to have to do much schoolwork or anything. And we moved to this farm. It was beautiful outside. We got to play out there a lot, but my mom kept being like, time for school. Come on, time to school. And
nice.
I was like, okay, we got to do this as part of being homeschooled. And then my mom wanted us to get involved in the homeschooling group, which annoyed the daylights out of me. I'm like,
right.
why do I need this? I don't need this.
I just
don't
need
want
to be by
this drama.
myself, guys. Get away from me.
Yeah. Just leave me alone.
Did your mom do most of like the formation for homeschooling? Or
yes,
because I don't know what I have never been homeschooled, and I don't know that many people who have been homeschooled other than you and a couple other people. But like, how does homeschooling work? First of all, like, I'm sure there's standards and stuff like that you guys have to abide to, just like
because as a kid, I went into it thinking that I wasn't gonna have to do any school.
Yeah,
and that was really exciting for me.
Right.
Then in reality, my mom was involved with other groups, and then moms talk with other moms, and they talk about curriculums. I never knew what the word curriculum meant as a 4th grader, and then I started being horrified when they're dumping Seton products on me and all these other really, now looking back, they're really solid learning tools. And I was like, why do we have to submit our stuff? So basically, my mom would sign up for a curriculum, and she would, help implement this. There would be a study plan that we'd have to do by a certain amount of time. We'd have to send some writing samples into this Seton homeschooling program. And there was different ones. There was people do all different sorts of it. And then each quarter, my mom had to submit like our grades and stuff like that to the Forestville, where we were, the school district there, to show that we were doing stuff and what we were covering. And that was like a big part of it. So after every year we do the Iowa standardized testing at the end of the year to just make sure we're moving along. So my mom had I'm not sure exactly what time, but a type of teaching degree. She would do substitute teaching a lot of times at the Catholic school. So she had some aspect of that. So we would go into some of the homeschooling settings like once a week, sometimes more than that. And we might have had a literature discussion. We might have been reading Tale of Two Cities and discussing it with our peers. Did a lot of theology formation. just a lot of things like that. A lot of the homeschooling too was socialization with doing plays, items, going to abortion clinics, just all this kind of different stuff that was customized around our Catholic faith. And with that was also flexibility. So my cousins also homeschooled for a little bit. They were Greek Orthodox, and we got to do field trips with them a lot. We got to go to the zoo or Niagara Falls. And you'd have some days where you didn't do that much school. And then you'd have summers where you had to do school through a lot of the summer. And I was happy with that kind of flexibility growing up as a kid. There was other times where I was stressed, and you had to be personally self-motivated to do a lot of this stuff.
Oh, I'm
to
sure.
write things. And then thankfully my dad had some insight, and he was able to help us with some math things. You know, my mom, God bless her, she wasn't the strongest at everything,
Sure.
but the one thing that I did gain and the experience that I gained, and recently we had a big surprised my sister before she went off to college, and we had a big surprise, you know, for that. Some of my siblings, my brother John, my brother Kevin, my sister Stephanie, they've been homeschooled the whole way through, so they have no idea of what that kind of school thing was. But all of us now have gone to college, and that is a pretty exciting thing. And one of the things that I, you know, talked to my mom about was there was a lot that she gave us in forms of what our foundation was. She might not have been the best English teacher or the math teacher, but she gave us enough foundation and a lot of things to keep our life on the right course. So that's my, you know, short. There's a lot to be said about it, but that's my shortened experience with homeschooling, where it takes a special kind of family to get through that.
Sure.
And, you know, to be always having your mom with you, you know, your teacher's there the whole time. My father was a superintendent, you know, it was always hard to get away. There was times where my mom would go to Australia for a nice trip with her best friend from college. Mm-hmm. And it was great because our mom and our teacher was gone for 2 weeks. So it was like, wow, this is like a vacation, you know, and it was a very interesting thing to have my dad in charge. And it was a very different thing. I grew to respect my mom a lot through that because she was the mom and also the teacher. So she was responsible for a lot of stuff for us. And I am thankful that she did exhibit as much patience that she did.
Sure.
But a lot of times you would get annoyed because your mom was your teacher, and that was annoying at times too. So looking back now, I am very grateful on that experience. And I can look at my siblings and seeing that they're all still practicing Catholics and everyone's attended college. And there is something to be said about that. I don't know what that ingredient is that made that successful, but my mom had 5 kids. We were homeschooled and we went to college. And that is something that I think is, I'm very proud of my mom for being able to get us through that.
Nice. That's awesome.
So, you know, and thanks to, there's a stigma with homeschoolers that, and a lot of it's true, that socially you're very awkward. And sometimes you maybe don't have the firmest grasp on reality, but there's a lot of times where this reality that, you know, the schools are going through with high schools and middle schools, like sometimes it's like, man, I'm glad I avoided a lot of that.
Sure.
as a kid.
Sure.
But what about you with your experience with public school? Because that's something that I've never been a part of. I've only heard of it from, you know, the teens that I minister to through youth ministry. But what about you experiencing it? What is that like?
Yeah, I would love. We're gonna get there, but I think part of the reason why I wanted to have this podcast episode topic was just to give some insight to maybe some dads who are thinking about, or some families who are thinking about these options. And so I just want to dive just a little bit deeper into homeschooling, Derek, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Me.
No,
like
that's fine.
I want to basically I want to be able to interview you, and then you can kind of interview me about public school.
Okay.
2 questions, right? The first question is, you talked about a little bit about how you needed to be a little bit self-motivated to do homeschooling, and I totally agree with that, just the way I see it and the way that I think it goes. But also, like, did you ever feel like because in public school, or in, like, you know, difference in like a school, in a formal school setting, right, your teacher's always kind of on you. Did you feel like you had that push from your mom or from whoever's, you know, teaching you Or did you feel like you had to do it mostly yourself and learning that skill and really setting you up for, I guess, self-motivation in the long run?
I think a lot of it in the beginning had to do with my mom motivating me. And
Sure.
also, if I wanted to keep my video game privileges going,
that's a super strong one. I think that's through all of it, right? Through public home and Catholic
I'll
school.
tell you what, man, buying a video game system for your kids is a really smart motivating factor because it gives you power.
It does, man.
I see it as a brilliant strategy now and not a weakness in parents getting video games.
Sure.
But, in the beginning, it was definitely more motivated by my mom. Once I started understanding what's at stake here and my education and going to college and having to pass the SATs and doing all of this, I started looking at the schedule like, oh my gosh, I have to really work on this and submit this in time. There's times like my junior year in high school where I'm looking at the curriculum. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so far behind on writing this and I need to get this done.
Sure.
And I want to graduate. And I want to go to school, but I need to follow this curriculum and do it. So in a way, I mean, it does. There's plenty of kids like this too, where it's just like I'm not motivated to do this. And I think that mixture of having, in the beginning, I was motivated because mom was telling me, dad was telling me, in order so I can have a good time and just enjoy the summer, I had to do it. But then I started looking at the bigger picture, like I need to accomplish this because I don't want to stay homeschooling till I'm like 21. I need to get out of here. So I need to cross all those boxes and get this moving. So I definitely think there was that nice evolution from my mom motivating me to the point where it's like, I got to do this. I got to handle this.
Did you ever feel like you were, okay, so like you have curriculum, like, for those who don't know, homeschool, they do have curriculum and everything they have to keep up. It sounds like you have to keep up kind of with the schedule. Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel like you might have been at a disadvantage compared to, someone in a formal school setting, but also kind of the second part to this question is, what, like, in your opinion, what were kind of the strengths and weaknesses of homeschooling?
I think I can look at it as a disadvantage for a lot of things. I look at my siblings now. So my sister who, is just graduating high school and going into college. Sure. I look at, my brother Kevin and my sister Stephanie, and I look at these high schoolers right now that I know through youth ministry.
Sure.
And they seem so different. The high schoolers now seem like adults and rightfully so. They've been put through so much school material, activities. They've had to do so much and their lives are so busy. They are really like high functioning young adults. It's really strange to think that where my siblings, the pace is a little bit slower because again, we grew up in the country and they're not much simpler people, but there is a difference in like, wow, you have conversations and it's a little bit different when you talk to a kid that has been going to a Catholic or public school.
Sure.
They've been through a lot. My siblings aren't involved in social media as much as a lot of the there's a type, I don't know if the word is innocence, but there's still some of that present in my siblings.
Sure.
Now, they're not perfect individuals, but I can tell a difference with my siblings. Like, wow, some of these kids seem a little bit older. Now, where I do feel like the advantage comes when you go into college, at least for me, it was a totally different beast than what I heard school was like. Because in college, you have to be self-motivated. You have to know what your strengths are for schooling. You have to be comfortable in the social situation because your mom and dad and like your other friends, for the most part, aren't going to be there. You are kind of on your own and you need to motivate yourself. I had some friends that had great SAT scores that went to college and they failed out the first semester because of the relationships they made, and they made some really poor choices right when they went to college. I didn't have the best SAT scores, but I also learned from homeschooling how I can effectively attack this curriculum, the syllabus that I see. How can I have a good time but still motivate myself to do that stuff? So the flexibility that I learned in homeschooling made me really love the college life because it's from what I know, it's very different from what school is because you are on your own. And it's like mom and dad, they don't necessarily know if you're going to classes or not. You're responsible for getting notes and doing all this stuff. So I feel like that was a strength for me because it made me learn to adapt to situations that maybe I need to work harder on this subject. And I can't focus all my time on one thing. And I felt empowered that my education was my own.
Oh, dude,
and
yeah,
that's something that I really gained from that.
yeah. No, that's super interesting that you mentioned that. Just because I can see that from what you tell me, and from what I kind of see from homeschooling, it just seems like homeschooling prepares you in kind of the more practical way, if you kind of get what I'm saying, for college. But that's super interesting. Like so getting into public school, right? Like my experience, and I don't think I have to dive in too deep with public school, just because it's it's the most. I guess I feel like if you look at statistics, we were just talking about statistics before the show. Most students, I would assume, go to public school, right? And so my experience is, from what I remember, like it was super, it was kind of like what you were saying. There's a lot going on when you go to a public school, right? Not only with the students themselves, there's a lot of kind of, and I wouldn't say even more today. There's really, like, you can, like, looking back and now being a Catholic school teacher, there's so much secularism in public school now. But not only that, but so there's a lot going on. We have like clubs and after school activities and band, and you have, not only that, but you have your AP classes, you have your regular classes, your honor classes and stuff like that. So I don't know, like, to me, can you still hear me, Derek? Am I good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, like, to me, looking back, public school, I don't dislike that I went to public school. I think looking back, if I could have, I would have chosen maybe private school or Catholic school to go to. But, my parents, I think they sent me to public school for a reason, and part of that is not only because they wanted to save money. Like, let's be honest here, right? Like, if we're looking at the bottom dollar, public school, is free relatively compared to a Catholic school or a private school. But also, I'm kind of, like, looking back, I'm actually kind of glad that I went to public school, just because, while you said that homeschooling maybe provided you or prepared you more for college in one way, I felt like the rigor of being in a public school helped me in college, where when I was in public school, I wasn't the kind of guy who was getting into parties and stuff like that. That wasn't kind of me until I got to college. I was doing the whole school thing, like, let's go to school, let's get my work done. Although I wasn't the smartest, and I wasn't in, like, ton of AP classes like some of my friends were, just because I had, sports and basketball and stuff like that. But I did, do my whole school thing, and I went through it. And to this day, some of my favorite teachers are teaching public school. And I think there's something to be said by that. I think if you ask a lot of teachers nowadays, who teach even in Catholic school, like some of their teachers, growing up, I think that's super unique in terms of, you meet these people in school. And someone, when I was at orientation this past week, we had the principal from Paul VI give all the high schoolers, or the high school teachers, kind of a pep talk for, like, starting the year and everything.
Yeah.
And he was saying, when you're a teacher, you don't really know, the seeds that we're planting, right? Like, this even goes to youth ministry. I'm sure you can attest to this too, Derek, as a youth minister. You don't really know the seeds where it's going to go, right? Like, we plant the seeds, and we hope it grows and flourishes, but we don't really know. And it was beautiful that he had. There was another teacher in the same classroom who had been in his first year of teaching. So this guy, this principal, he taught, like, calculus or something. It's like, 20 years ago, 17 years ago or something like that. And one of his first students was sitting in that room about to become a teacher for the first time, which I thought was really cool. And it's like, you don't know that. And for me, I can easily remember my favorite two teachers, right? Mr. Chamberlain, who taught AP, he taught me AP geography and social studies. Part of the reason, I think he's probably the biggest reason why I became a history teacher, just the way he taught. And then Mr. Lent, who was my technology teacher, and we used to play Halo 2 in his classroom, and he didn't care. He was just like, guys, like, this is like a college classroom, so you have a deadline for your project. as long as you get your stuff in by that deadline, I don't care what you do. I'm like, all right. So I used to play Halo 2 in his classroom, and that's part of the public school thing, by the way. That would never float.
Holy crap! Yeah,
it would never float in Catholic school or private school or homeschool. Maybe homeschool. I don't know.
Oh yeah, we got away with that sometimes. Yeah, Mom had to go pick up milk at the store.
Dude, we have like 20 kids in that class, and everything's hooked up to a network. So we would play Halo 2 in there. It was awesome. And then I remember I would go to ESPN, to the Dallas Cowboys board. If you don't know, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. We probably lost half our viewership right here.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
But I would go to the ESPN.com, and I would go to the Dallas Cowboys messenger board, and I would read people's like comments and stuff like that. And it used to be really great. But no, like, it's just, those are my two favorite teachers, and they're kind of the reasons why I became a teacher today. So like, looking back, I'm really glad that I went to public school. I will say public school does what's that word I'm looking for, Derek? Expose you to a lot of different things, a lot of different people. And I would say that, I think that, and a lot of different views, to be honest with you. And I would say that is kind of the biggest experience I take back away from public school, is that I was exposed to a lot of different things. And I think, especially being Catholic, I think if you're not rooted, and it even goes, and then it just gets even bigger in college. I think if you're not rooted in Catholic social teaching, or even like Catholic, your Catholic identity, I think you could be potentially what's that, I guess you could take on those views, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's,
and be heavily influenced,
right?
By
Heavily
that
influenced, right? Like, public school. But I think I think that's part of the pros and cons, is that you're exposed to different people, and that's how, I guess, the real world is, right? Like, there's so many different and unique people in this world that you do get that a little bit in a public school.
My thought is that it's different, right? From when you were a little kid going up, through, let's say, third grade up. The school system, and at least what they're influenced by, and I don't know, what's accessible for them is really different from what we had as kids. I cannot believe all the things that I hear from these freshmen in high school about just what the social media aspect is for them, and how, just the rhetoric is. It is very different from what I, as a third grader, I can't believe, when I go over and I, speak to some of these 7th and 8th graders, I can't believe the amount of stuff that they've had to deal with already, or things that are very just normal for them. Where as a kid, for me being homeschooled, and I would think a lot of people too, you should not be introduced to this stuff so early.
Sure.
And, and part of that is, are you sheltering your kids by homeschooling and avoiding that? Yeah, sure, partly. But it's why do they need to have that aspect? And the problem is there's so much peer pressure, right? Because all your friends are on social media, are on Snapchat. People are using all the same language. Before, for me, it's cell phones. My family had their first car cell phone. I don't know when, but it was one of those big boxes that we would have in our car. And that was our portable, cell phone. The technology has changed the whole aspect of it, where I can't even compare what my Catholic schooling stuff was compared to these kids nowadays. It seems like such a different world. Have you noticed that, with when you've been teaching in school, right? What grades did you teach back at your previous employment?
So I've taught 4th grade. So I taught 4th grade, and then I taught a little bit of middle school before that. So, and then now I'm going to be teaching freshmen and juniors this year. So
I'm just curious, when you had those, did they seem familiar to you? Oh, this is how I was when I was a kid, or I'm just curious.
I feel like, looking at being a teacher, and even my experience in public school, I feel like, and just my experience, by the way, in my opinion, I feel like kids are forced to grow up a little bit faster than we would growing up. My case and example is, I look at these kids, even in 4th grade, right? I look at these kids nowadays, and they're the way they dress. I mean, I taught at a Catholic school, so they had uniforms, but anytime we had out of uniform day or something like that, the way these kids dress, to be honest with you, I'm like, how do you know about this stuff? Because I just learned about this stuff, you know what I mean? And I'm like, they already knew it, and it's crazy. It is crazy to see, even in a Catholic school or even, and especially in public school is that I think some of these kids are forced, not really forced, or obviously they have a choice, but they're coerced or they're peer pressured to follow the lingo or follow the latest trends or, be on social media. And they're just, I feel like today kids can't be kids anymore. I remember when I was a kid in school and even up to high school, we would be outside every single day. Homework was done, we were outside. And I feel like nowadays, kids are, would rather stay inside and they'd rather play games or they'd rather be on their cell phone or be on social media. And I think you get a lot of that in public and even in Catholic school.
Well, right. I mean, that was me as a kid at like 3rd, 2nd grade. I'd want to go. We didn't have video games at that point. My parents didn't allow that. So we'd either watch TV or get kicked outside, but we didn't have a phone to bring with us. We'd be outside and like playing with our neighbors and stuff, and when we got older to have video games, of course we'd be like, I want to play video games, but it's nice outside. Mom's going to yell at us. Let's go play outside.
Right. Oh,
and,
yeah.
We didn't have phones. I didn't have my phone until like later on in college.
Oh, man.
And to me, it's a very different thing. And I would assume that a lot of our listeners that have older children, you're kind of in this weird growing stage where, like you said, you're just learning about some of this and your kids have already known about this for like years, like with either the trends or like what social media things are. And I'm sure it's very difficult for parents, especially now with teenagers, to be keeping up with that because their world experience is so different than yours was as a student. I see that right now with my high schoolers that I deal with. And like you said, I mean, I'm seeing them as miniature adults when they're graduating. There's so many awesome teens that I know from Our Lady of Good Counsel that go to high school that I would trust them with a lot of things. Like if I gave them, I'm like, this needs to be accomplished. I need you to get a couple of your friends and we need this accomplished. Like we need this picked up for whatever like fundraiser thing we're doing. I'm like, and here's some money to help, do this for this program. Can you do it? And they're like, yeah. I would have to give my brother, I think, a lot of like pointers on, like some of these things to just feel comfortable doing it. Where these kids nowadays, the schooling system and everything has been working well because they are like mini adults right now. And that is, it's awesome. And at the same time, it's like they're not children as long anymore.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I even see that with my youngest brother. Like, I think part of the reason, and I'd have to say he grew up really quick because he is part of that age group where I feel like it was the first kind of wave of the kids couldn't be kids as long, I think part of it's having 2 older brothers who kind of went, because when we were in high school, he was like still in like elementary, middle school, right? And so he would look to us, for example, and my brother and I, we grew up quick in high school. I mean, we were kind of like the first, like, you know what I mean, to grow up and kind of be on social media like MySpace, like MySpace and AOL Instant Messenger and stuff like that. And so my brother, even looking at him, my youngest brother, I don't think he got to be a kid as long as I would have liked him to be a kid. He grew up quick because he saw his older brothers, dressing, fashionably and being exposed to the first kind of social media in MySpace and in I don't even know. Gosh, what were the first in AOL and Messenger stuff like that. Anyway, but yeah, I even saw my brother, and he's kind of a product of public school too. Any other questions about public school before we move on? Just I don't know if you have any questions before we move on.
How did you balance then your religious life? Like, because that puts a lot of pressure then doing a public school for your family to definitely be the center of your theological teaching.
That's a great question, Derek. You know what? To be honest with you, my parents tried their best, and this is just me looking back. They put me through, the CCD program because when you're not in Catholic school or you're not homeschool, you're not exposed to it as much. Because you're in a public setting, but also like you're not exposed to it much because the people around you aren't exposed to it, and they're not the people you hang out with aren't necessarily Catholic or aren't necessarily religious type people. And so for me, my parents tried, they put me through CCD, which is kind of the religious formation, Catholic formation for students who are not in Catholic school. and that's how I got my sacraments that way. They brought me to mass. But other than that, the only way we would be kind of exposed or, finding a balance between where it was when we prayed as a family. Like, that's probably the best answer I have for you, Derek. But mostly, to be honest with you, when I look back on public school, there's so much pressure to do well in a public school setting. I don't know about homeschooling or, growing up in Catholic school, but there's so much pressure, especially if you have parents who are more involved. There's also, I feel like they're in public school, you can definitely have parents who just don't care, right? Like, that's definitely there. Where like in Catholic school, I feel like every parent cares, right? Because they're paying for it, in homeschool, especially because they're your own kids, right? But in public school, you have kind of two sides of a coin, where you have a lot of students who are really, really, really pressured to do well. And there is no balance, between, a spiritual life or the other aspects of kind of teaching the whole student, right? Like, it's all about academics in a public school. So yeah, no, that's what I would say. Like, it's tough to balance like the whole child in a public school.
And then my final question that kind of applies to both of us is, do you find yourself in contact more like now as an adult with your friends from public school or from college? Like, did a lot from your public school, like, do they carry on as friends now that you're an adult, or are most of your friends from college, or how is it for you?
I think it just depends. Like, for me, like personally for me, I don't keep in contact with pretty much everyone from my public school unless we were like really, really good friends. Like, I'll speak to like, one or two every once in a while on Facebook, especially if I know they're Catholic, which is really nice to be like, it's really nice to look back and be like, oh man, you're super Catholic and you came from the same high school as I did. That's really cool. I have a friend, I think he listens. Actually, when I started this podcast, shout out to you, my friend, Mark Hugel, fellow New York Yankee. Is he Yankee? He got to be a Yankee fan. Anyway, he messaged me, and to be honest with you, I didn't even know he was Catholic, but he messaged me and he was like, hey, just letting you know, like, I think that's a great idea for a podcast. I think it's a great idea for a ministry. I'll be praying for you. And God bless. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. And my other friend, Chrissy, who was a youth minister in the Richmond Diocese, shout out to her. She's also from high school. She was like every class. She was like in every one of my classes. And I actually didn't know she was Catholic until we went to like the same college, which was really funny. So what I would say is no, like I don't keep up with a lot of friendships from my high school, which is really funny because I'm sure it's a little bit different for different people, but I would say no, just because I was kind of everywhere. But from what I can see on Facebook, a lot of my friends from high school do keep in contact with people from our high school. But personally, I didn't. All my friends come from either college or post-college.
Okay.
So how about you?
I would say it's about this. I mean, with our homeschooling group, I know what they're all doing right now. Like, again, our graduating class is vastly different than a public school graduation, where I know how those families are doing, because not only with the homeschool gatherings are you knowing about your classmates, but you also know about their family and their younger siblings. So, I mean, through the magic of Facebook, we get to know like how those families are doing, if they're still practicing their faith, which has always been an interesting case study in of itself, because you can kind of track like what, how did their religious, life go, as well as their collegiate career. And that's been really neat to just kind of see it. But I mean, a lot of my closest friends was like Christendom and people that have known our family for like a long time. But Christendom definitely, because I mean, the same thing. Did you know school who your Catholic friends were? Did you know, or was that just not on your mind at all?
Say that one more time, Derek. You kind of went in and out there.
So did you know who your public school, like for your fellow classmates? Did you know, or just cross your mind at all?
Oh man, we're getting some technical issues here, guys. Sorry about that. So did I know who were my Catholic friends in public high school? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No, I didn't, right? Like, because in public school, obviously there's separation of government and religion, right? Like, I mean, separation of state and church. Like, everybody knows that. And so in public school, no one talks about religion. Like, I don't even think I had a conversation with anyone about religion unless I knew they went to church, or I knew they went to my church, or they're in my CCD program or something. You know what I mean? Something like that. But no, like I didn't know who was Catholic, but at the same time, like being a product of public school, I wasn't really into my faith either. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, it's not like I'm not showboating my faith today. That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm not. But especially in high school, you don't really like wear that on your sleeve, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I know my students that don't go to a Catholic school, that go to public school, those that I work with youth ministry, they get absolutely torn up when they say they're pro-life or what their stances are.
Sure.
They get eaten by everybody, and it's for them to express their Catholic faith is so difficult nowadays because word spreads so fast with Twitter, with Instagram, with Snapchat, like everything, like their group texts, everything blows up if you like. And God bless them for making that stand out there. And it's a tough world for them to live in, just to have that, to actually wear that Catholic thing on your sleeve and actually speak up about it in class. And I think, I was just curious on if you knew those people, because I know for sure, like these kids at these schools now, it's very easy to know who the Catholics are because they're the ones that are getting ridiculed like a lot of the time from their peers.
All right. That's a good point there. We have to move on a little bit here. Now we've talked about public school, we've talked about homeschool. Let's talk about, and specifically, like obviously there's private school and there's boarding school, but we don't have experiences with that. So let's talk about Catholic school here, right? Which is, I would say, which is kind of the middle ground between homeschool and kind of public school, like not public in terms of like public, but in terms of a formal school setting, Derek. So in Catholic school, and I have bullet points here if you want to look it with me, but you have, the religion aspect, right? Of course you have the religion and the Catholic identity aspect, in some schools more than others, obviously. You have the safety aspect, you have the academic quality aspects, you have the positive socialization with people of different ages aspect, you have the kind of, from what my experience, you have the family togetherness. It feels like you're going to find a lot more people in Catholic school who come from a family who's more involved than you would in a public school setting, right? You have your separation of government and school, where you can be open about your religion, your Catholic identity. You can wear it on your sleeve. You have smaller classes, sometimes you do, where a student can get more one-on-one time with the teacher, where in public school, that's hard, right? You have an emphasis on mastery instead of grades in a Catholic school. But of course, you have the expenses of a Catholic school. In your opinion, and I know you went to Catholic school in 3rd and 4th grade, what is your opinion of Catholic school? And judging on from your experiences, do you kind of like Catholic school teaching, or like what? How do you feel about it?
The one thing, and again, these are things you don't really appreciate until later.
Sure, definitely.
We went to mass. I don't know if it was every day. I can't really remember specifically, but I remember going to class with my fellow classmates, and it just felt like the Catholic Church was part of our life, and it wasn't any different because that's all I knew. So going to mass and church, it was like part of our formation, and I appreciate that looking back now. We had uniforms, and I was terrible at that.
You hated them, right?
I hated him, man. And I was so bad at remembering things like my belt. And we had Sister Sheila was the principal there. So a lot of the sisters had worked like the library and stuff.
Yeah.
And I went to Sister Sheila's office so many times, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I forgot my belt again.
Dude, no wonder your mom pulled you out, man.
Man. Well, and to top that off with, those were self-inflicted, the bully stuff, like getting fights on the bus and just getting tired of all their stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And it was cool to my teachers for the most part were really awesome. And Mrs. Deigler, she was one of my favorites. I think I'm friends with her on Facebook. I don't really talk to her at all, but she was my second grade teacher, and she was like the sweetest person. Aww. And that was like some of the things, was like there was some really nice people that were involved there.
Definitely.
And what I think I did enjoy just like that aspect of the consistency of going to classes, and like you had to wear a certain, like everyone did look the same because you had to wear a uniform. Right. When I went to Christendom College, they had a dress code as well. Okay. So I, had PTSD from like putting on a belt, like making sure I had everything. Yeah. But I appreciated that because when I went to, SUNY state school for Fredonia to finish up my degree, people would show up in their PJs, and I'm like, they just look like garbage coming into class.
Don't make fun of me. That was me in college.
Oh, was that you?
That was totally me. I really, really love Catholic school, and it's a testament to me being in Catholic school teaching for this long. I think that there's a great thing with Catholic school. I think it's awesome that you get to wear your Catholic, especially if you're really into your faith, you get to wear your Catholic identity on your sleeve, right? Like everything about Catholic school is that everything is tailored towards one mission, right? The mission of the church, right? The one thing I'll say about Catholic school, and this is from a teacher's perspective, is that I feel like, and I know for a fact, is that I my opinion is that, guys, and I'm not trashing public school, okay? Please don't take that away from this. But I feel like in Catholic school, you get a lot more teachers who care about the whole child, right? It's not just, I care about your academics or I care about you as a child, but I care about teaching you the whole child, right? Spiritually, physically, mentally, academically. And you get a lot more teachers who just care and are allowed to care, right? Like in a public school, it feels like there's a barrier between student and teacher, where the teacher kind of has to take a step back and might not be able to chat one-on-one about students' problems or something like that. Where in a Catholic school, you get more of that. You know what I mean? And I love the fact that a lot more parents are involved in a Catholic school versus a public school. A lot of the times in public school, you have a parent drop off their kid and, hey, we'll see you at 3. You know what I mean? Where from my experiences, I had a lot of parents who were like, what can I do to help? Way more parents than I should have, gotten. But on the flip side of that, a lot of parents care too much. You know what I mean? They're really, really involved, where they're a little bit helicoptery, if you get what I'm saying. But I would say, like, I love Catholic school and I love teaching at Catholic school. I love that I get to wear my own Catholic identity and share the faith with my students. And I think that's my favorite part. And I think that's why I got into teaching religion eventually. I think this is I feel like this is kind of my dream job per se. Just that I get to teach students about the faith on a day-to-day kind of Catholic formal student, Catholic classroom environment. But yeah, that's kind of like my opinion on it.
And again, I don't have any knowledge of the public school system other than from what I've heard from other students. And I know there's some tremendous, amazing public school teachers out there.
100%.
But I also do understand now, as a parent that's starting to think ahead like that, when I think of who is teaching my child, if I send them to school or what I'm doing, there's sometimes with a teacher, you don't know exactly what their foundation is or what their certain beliefs are and thing. And it is nice to send your child somewhere. They're gone, they're away from you. But if you know that teacher's foundation is rooted very closely to yours, there is a piece, at least for me as a parent, when I'm thinking about this, there's a piece of like, that teacher is probably, that teacher might even be praying for my child at night. And that's like a very good peace of mind for me to think of. That foundation that's important to me is probably rooted in that individual. Now, there's Catholics in public school, and they might pray for their public school students, like this underground praying idea. But I know there's a greater chance for that at a Catholic school.
100%. And, shout out to Catholics who go teach in public school, because there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's awesome. I think there needs to be there. It's just like us here on this podcast apps. There needs to be Christ in podcasting. There needs to be Christ on YouTube. There needs to be Christ in public school, whether you agree with that or not. It doesn't have to be in your face, you know what I mean? But it has to be lived out through joy and through caring and through kindness, and grace. And I just believe in that,
Well, exactly, because if you're in public school and a student is like, wow, why is this professor so like happy? Awesome? Like, what is the core of this? Right. And if you find out like, wow, they're Catholic, I thought that's restrictive. Why are they so outgoing and joyful?
Sure.
That's going to change someone better than like the best math class that you're ever going to give, because this is something you're giving something at the core that is a little bit deeper than knowledge that might possibly forgotten. This could be something that's really fast evolving their life to something like fuller and grander.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. All right, so last question before we kind of wrap up the podcast is I kind of want to get our personal opinion, and this is just us kind of looking forward. You were talking about looking forward. It's really nice to look back on our experiences and now be a parent and see, okay, what's right for my children? What's right for, what's right for, me as a parent, but also my wife, right? Where do you fall? Like, where do you fall on to sending? Because you're in the stage where you're actually sending your kids to school now, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Where do you? I guess because you have that experience, where do you send your kids? If you don't mind sharing, or if you don't care, if you do mind sharing, like where do you look ahead to? Like public school, homeschool, Catholic school.
To be completely honest with this whole thing, deciding where your children are going to school came so fast for me personally. Like Bethany might have been thinking about it. For me, it shocked me how fast all of a sudden where my child is 6 years old and we're talking about like kindergarten, where we're sending to school,
crazy.
If it should be our St. Andrew's school, or if it should be somewhere. And that was it was surprising how fast that came up, because my children, to me, they're still like little babies, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about school and backpacks, and John, it's going to hit you so fast too, where it's like, where did that go? Both my wife and I were homeschooled. Bethany, towards high school, she did a similar youth group kind of setting. It was like a charter school, so they would have specific things taught by other teachers, and they would go, and there was like kind of a freedom with that, but also a consistency. So with our conversation, it was we right now are currently involved with the Aquinas Learning Center.
Cool.
And it's once a week. We take our kids. Well, it's going to be Avila this year too, so we have 2 kids that are going to be going into the system. But it's kind of like a once a week kind of school thing with a curriculum. So during the week, we have to do the lessons and go over the songs, and it really puts this, to me, a nice, interesting balance of your family is forming your child's faith and also their education. You're getting helped out because there's a curriculum, and you can also, they also get the social experience of being, they have like, there's, tests and productions and everything that they have to do within the school system. And you have these teachers that you get to meet, and
that's awesome.
It's a really interesting like community, but it has to have a special kind of person that is, right now it's perfect for my wife and I with our job situation, because I know a lot of our listeners be like, I would love to do that, but I have this 9-to-5 job, or I can't do this, and my mom was able to do it. She had a lot of business stuff, but you have to have the right mindset to do it. It is not for everybody. And right now for Bethany and I, this Aquinas learning thing is our step right now. And I don't know specifically what is the next step, but right now we're going to focus the best we can on what we have right here. And I know a lot of parents in this area, like they have a lot of what is planned out for their students.
Oh yeah.
And and that's fine. But for right now, we're going to just kind of go to the needs of each one of our children. Kateri is by far the most intelligent kid that we have. And she's going to be the one that'll want to pursue this and probably want to get into teaching someday. Avila is probably going to end up in prison. So we just want to make that. No, I'm just kidding. Just pray for it though. And so, we have to be just mindful of our children right now. But I will say that it came so fast, John, that
dude.
I wasn't ready.
What
about for you?
We were at Derek. We were at James's 1-year appointment or something like that, and I remember one of the things she brought up. She was like, "Okay, the next time he'll get this shot is when he's going into kindergarten." And I was like,
"Oh, jeez."
And I was like, "What? I'm not even thinking about that." But then I thought about it. He's going to kindergarten, potentially pre-K, potentially in like 3 years. I can't. That's fast, dude.
Yeah,
like that is really fast. I think you hit the ball on the nose, and I kind of want to end the podcast on this note before I kind of tell my opinions. Is that I think a lot of parents have to. It's hard, and I know we're so busy, and we have 9-to-5 jobs, a lot of us. But I think one of the problems in today's society, Derek, and I think you'll agree with me, is that a lot of parents are forgetting their vocation of being primary educators, and I think a lot of our problems that you can see in today's society, I think stem from that. Like, and it makes me sad because coming from a teacher side, I saw a lot. I'm obviously not calling any parents, but I'd have parents who are completely not involved.
Yeah, that's
they
sad.
would drop their kids off, and I even had a parent email me and say, what are you talking about? You're my child's primary educator, and I'm in my mind, and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm not. You know, I'm a teacher, and I'm a tool to you as their primary educator. And I think if a lot of parents can remember that and just be involved in their child's life, and I know we're all so busy, I think we'd have a lot less problems than we would. You know,
no, that's a very interesting insight.
Yeah, but for us, I think being a Catholic school teacher, I would love for my kids to go through Catholic school teaching. I think the biggest hindrance would be the expenses and figuring that out. But more and more, Fatima and I have been researching homeschooling, and we've talked to a lot of friends who are doing that. And me being a teacher, my Fatima and I, we've even talked one day that I could be my kid's homeschool teacher because I have experience teaching and stuff like that, which I think would be a great tool to them, to be honest with you. Just like I think you said your dad was a superintendent or something like that. That's really cool.
Well, yeah, that's what we call him,
Oh, yeah.
Call him superintendent, the boss, whatever you call him.
But no, yeah. So Fatima and I think we're kind of in the same boat as you. It's just we need to look at our kids and see what the best route is for each and every single one of their individual talents and skills and intellect but I think if we can make it work, we'd rather our kids go to Catholic school, which because my wife, she's a product of Catholic school teaching, and she turns out amazing. Obviously, she's my wife. She's the most amazing person ever. And I teach at Catholic school, so I think if we can make it work, we'll make it work. If not, I think we would love to figure out if we can make homeschooling work as well. And if not, I think public school isn't that bad of an option. I think it just comes down to, again, if you as a parent can teach your kids what the right values are, especially if you're Catholic, really root Catholic identity in your child, I think public school, they won't be fazed by kind of the influences that happen in public school.
I really think that, right, like you said, that foundation, if you can get that core going, whatever schooling you're doing, but where your family unit is number one, like over the school,
definitely,
and you can make sure that your child is going to mass with you. You can't just send them off to mass and like you not going to the holy day of obligation without, you're sending a wrong message. You as the father, the mother, you need to be the ones that are leading the way for your students, because that foundation is the thing that's going to carry with them most when they're adults. And that's what I'm thinking, like my mom being the example of going to, like, that's the stuff that rooted me.
Sure.
And any successes and any blessings I have is rooted because our family went to church together, and we may not have been the most cohesive family, not the best homeschooling family, but we had that foundation, and that's helped keep us solid. And that's all I have to like really think about with any of the school stuff. Just like you were saying, you keep that communication going, you keep your children involved with you, and you're going to end up okay one of these ways.
Definitely. Well, Derek, that has been episode 22 of the Bad Catholic Dads podcast. Thank you. That was a good conversation. I know it went a little bit longer than we aimed for, but thank you, Derek. I think that was a really good conversation. I think the listeners will definitely appreciate this topic, especially with school just right around the corner. All right, let's get into some announcements. Derek, do you want to hit up the first announcement?
Yep. First announcement, we're having our first ever Bad Catholic Dads Fantasy Football League. Invites are open. If you have any interest in being in fantasy football, maybe you've never done it, maybe you're a pro.
It's free. We're not doing it for money. We will have a prize, right, at the end?
Yes. Yeah. We're going to have some awesome prize that's going to commemorate your victory or my victory, because I'm planning on winning this thing.
There you go. Someone take down
please,
Derek.
if you're interested in playing, send us a message on any of the social platforms.
Definitely.
And we'd love to. I'd like to get it at around 10, but if we get, if we want to do the 12 disciples, whatever we want to do, let's get in there. I would like to have like the draft right around the end of August, maybe in the beginning of September. That way all the injuries can work itself out.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about BCD Squared?
Yep. We just released Bad Catholic Dads Squared, which, if you don't know, is our second podcast where we review. We try to keep it separate from this podcast because I feel like if we start mixing and matching, it's not consistent. On this podcast, we like to talk more about kind of topical topics on fatherhood and being Catholic. We're on that other podcast. It's Bad Catholic Dads Squared, which stands for books, cinema, and digital. We primarily have it for reviewing books and movies and video games. So check that out. All your, we're on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. So definitely check that out and listen to that. Speaking of Bad Catholic Dads Squared, our next episode, it's only once a month, by the way. Our next episode will be in September, the beginning of September sometime. So that's episode 4. And we're going to do a video game this time because I think the first one we did Jim Gaffigan's book. The last 2 have been movies with Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, and Dunkirk. And this one is going to be a video game. So if you're into video games and your dad is probably most likely you are, we have a poll out right now. The 4 games we're going to choose from are you're going to have to help me out, Derek. Ori and the Blind Forest, which is for the Xbox and PC. Valiant Hearts, which is a multi-platform game based on World War I. We have BioShock Infinite, which is probably our bigger game, and if we choose that, we're gonna have to get the ball rolling soon on that one. Because that's kind of a longer game. And then our last game is Little Nightmares, which is kind of brand new, right, Derek, on the Xbox One. It's about a little kid who kind of goes through these terrifying experiences, but it has kind of this kind of over message on there. So definitely, if you want to vote for that, go to twitter.com/badcatholicdads. We have a poll going. It ends in like 2 days. So please vote for the video game you want us to review. And then finally, or second to last, we're doing a Wonder Woman digital giveaway. I think, did you see that one that I posted today, Derek?
Yeah, loved it.
So to get more reviews, because reviews really help out the podcast, if you leave us, there's 2 ways to enter in the competition. We're going to do a random winner draw for Wonder Woman on digital, which comes out on the August 29th. So if you want to win that for free, you can either leave us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcast app. Just leave us a review. If you've already left us a review, you're already entered. If you leave us a review, that's great. Or you can visit patreon.com/badcatholicdad. I created a separate reward. So if you support us at the $2 level or more, you're automatically entered into that drawing as well. I mean, $2 can get you a $29.99 movie, which is awesome. And so definitely check that out. And then stay tuned for our Patreon because that's going to be updating soon. We're going to have awesome rewards. Shout outs, Derek. My shout outs are to Dude Catholic again. He saw that we shouted him out last podcast, so I just want to shout him out one more time. He left us a really nice Instagram comment. He said, heard the podcast last night. He's talking about our drinking episode with, shout out to Dan Delaney. Is that his name?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He said, just caught up. Oh, no. He said, what did he say? He said, oh, yeah. Heard the podcast last night. Thanks so much for the shout outs. That iTunes review was also us. So that was the last iTunes review.
Okay.
Showing support. Keep doing what you're doing. We are in this together, restoring manhood and building the kingdom. Hashtag, oh gosh, man, he's probably going to be like, what? They can't even speak Latin. Ferrum Cutiar. Nope. Anyway, and then hashtag.
Close enough.
And then, of course, hashtag Derek 44%. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, is that the manliness? What was the?
When you listen to this podcast, your manliness
increases.
Levels increases 44%. And then my last shout out goes to Kevin, the Catholic Gamer. He left us a really nice comment on YouTube. Did you see this, Derek?
No, I didn't see this one.
So Kevin, the Catholic Gamer. Everyone go show him some love on Twitter. You can type in Kevin, the Catholic Gamer, or you can find him on YouTube. He does Let's Plays. And he's like a Catholic gamer. He sent us a let me find it. Here it is. He sent us a nice comment on YouTube on our Dunkirk review. He says, might eventually recommend Never Ending Nightmares for game recommendations, by the way. It was made by a Catholic that suffers from depression, and it shows how depression affected him as well as his faith some parts. Good episode, though. Actually made me a bit interested in Dunkirk as I wasn't interested in before. So thank you so much, Kevin. And last but not least, thank you to our patrons, of course, who have supported us on Patreon. Any shout outs, Derek?
No, I mean, just mainly to just a re-shout out to Dan for being such a great guest recently on our last episode. I heard a lot of positive things about that. So I'm just really thankful that he was so well researched on his topic and he was excited to share that. And I know he's not the most extroverted type of person, but he spoke so eloquently and he was fantastic. And I really appreciate him kind of getting out of that comfort zone and helping us out there.
Definitely. Prayer request, Derek. Do you have any prayer requests? My prayer requests are for all teachers because A lot of the teachers are starting up this week and next week. So please pray for your teachers and for all those who are in education.
Yeah, cool. I want to go right off of that one too, and just pray for all the parents that this school year can be really productive for their family, getting closer together as a unit and to communicate better and to just be a stronger unit.
Definitely. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Last time I checked, I don't believe we had a new review.
Still at 10.
Still at 10. We got to get 11 now and more. It could win you a free Wonder Woman on digital release. So definitely leave us our iTunes review. That really helps out the podcast. You can find us on you can find us on the Apple Podcast app. You can also find us on SoundCloud and Google Play. Derek updates the YouTube, so shout out to you, Derek, for always updating YouTube for me because I hate that.
It is annoying.
Seriously.
It is annoying.
And you can follow us on Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Please leave us a nice comment there. So anything else, Derek, before we go?
Nope. Just next review. Got to crank it to 11. That's our number 11 review.
Crank it to 11. See you guys next week. God bless.